Right now, global markets are bracing for a shock. We're looking at a scenario where international shipping lanes are frozen in place, and inflation starts climbing before you even notice. This map shows exactly where that shock originates. Down here at the edge of the Middle East sits the Strait of Hormuz, a remarkably narrow waterway separating Iran from the Arabian Peninsula. 20% of the entire global oil supply has to pass right through this specific bottleneck. If that flow is cut, the energy market spirals. The actors standing around this choke point, the United States, Israel, and Iran, aren't here by accident. The missiles firing today are the culmination of 45 years of calculated, escalating hostility. To understand why your gas and grocery bills might skyrocket next month, we have to go back to a time when Washington and Tehran were actually the closest of allies. Before 1979, the United States didn't view Iran as a threat. They viewed it as their blueprint for a perfect Middle Eastern partnership. Washington poured massive money and military hardware into the hands of Iran's monarch, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, securing a pro-Western anchor in the region. But the Iranian public saw an entirely different reality. To them, the Shah was a corrupt autocrat who sold out his country's autonomy to serve American interests. The tensions snapped. In 1979, millions took to the streets in the Islamic Revolution. They dismantled the monarchy and installed a new regime defined by its fierce opposition to Western influence. The definitive breaking point came when Iranian students overran the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, seizing 52 Americans and holding them for over 400 days. In a matter of months, a heavily funded geopolitical partnership completely evaporated. In its place, a bitter ideological rivalry took root, locking both nations into a decades-long standoff. Tehran knew a direct, conventional war with the U.S. or Israel would be suicidal, so they built a system to project military power without ever officially pulling the trigger. Iran's leadership formally opposed the existence of Israel. To act, Tehran began funding and arming militant factions on Israel's borders, including Hamas in Gaza. They expanded this network northward into Lebanon through Hezbollah, supplying them with extensive financial backing and massive stockpiles of rockets. By pulling these strings, Iran effectively surrounded Israel with heavily armed enemies and forced the U.S. into endless skirmishes, while maintaining a thin veil of official deniability. The central dispute of the modern standoff centers on Iran's nuclear program. Tehran claims it serves civilian energy needs, while Western intelligence remains convinced it's a cover for military armament. This chart shows how that risk accelerated. After the 2018 U.S. withdrawal from the nuclear deal, Iran began enriching uranium at much higher levels, pushing closer and closer to the threshold required for a weapon. The Israeli government views a nuclear-armed Iran as a direct threat to the state's survival, a risk they consider far more severe than standard regional friction. History shows that Israel acts on these concerns. In 1981, they bombed a suspected nuclear reactor in Iraq. In 2007, they targeted a facility in Syria for the exact same reason. Their current military strategy is built on this doctrine of preemptive action, striking the threat before the bomb is ever completed. The intersection of Iran's advancing nuclear capabilities and Israel's history of first strikes makes a direct military clash the logical endpoint of their current trajectories. We are watching a transition from a cold proxy war to a hot, direct confrontation. The shadow war is ending, and the state actors themselves are now trading blows. U.S. and Israeli forces have coordinated major offensives aimed directly at crippling Iranian military bases and removing its top military leadership. In response, Iran retaliated with direct missile and drone swarms launched from their own territory, targeting Israeli cities and U.S. bases across the Middle East. The long-standing deterrent strategies that kept the region in a tense but managed standoff for decades have effectively collapsed. By crossing into direct military engagement, the geopolitical safety nets have been removed. The region has moved past a cycle of skirmishes and into a state of open warfare. If this regional war locks down the Strait of Hormuz, the flowchart for the global economy is clear. Oil prices spike, shipping costs rise, and massive inflation hits consumers everywhere. But the true weight of this conflict isn't found in macroeconomic charts. It's found in the human reality on the ground. Millions of Iranians have endured decades of severe sanctions and hyperinflation, living in poverty because of a standoff they didn't choose. On the other side, Generations of Israeli citizens have been conditioned to live under the constant threat of rocket fire, growing up with the sounds of air raid sirens and the necessity of bomb shelters. While governments continue a 45-year geopolitical chess match for regional dominance, the civilians caught in the crossfire are the ones paying the ultimate price.